My name is Mitchel Whitington, and I'm the author of The Midnight Saint. This book has had quite an incredible journey, I guess you'd say. It started 30 years ago. I was sitting at my desk and I was reading a Dallas newspaper. It was Christmas time. And on the front cover of the entertainment section was a photograph of a girl dressed in a white gown with a red sash. On her head was a green wreath with candles stuck in it that were lit, and she was carrying a candle. And the headline said something about a St. Lucia's Day celebration at a local church. Now, I thought I knew everything there was to know about Christmas time. It was my favorite time of the year. I didn't know anything about St. Lucia though, so I went to the library and I started doing research. Remember, this was 30 years ago. This is long before the days of the internet where you have all this information at your fingertips. Well, I started reading about this young Italian girl and her life and her death, and how she became one of the icons of Christmas time in the Scandinavian countries. Really a beautiful thing. I was really taken up by this, and I knew that she was going to play some part of my life somewhere. So I had a folder full of information by then, and I just filed that away for future reference, knowing I would need it at some point. Well, not long after that, I was talking to my father, and he said, well, I just threw some money away, probably wasted some money. I said, what do you mean, Dad? He said, I had gone to the gas station to fill up, and in the lane next to me was a couple in an old car. And in the back seat was a young girl, assumed to be their daughter, I guess, and the young man got out of the car and walked over to me and told me his story. He was out of work, but he had landed a job that was now one state away. They had been driving to get there, and they were one state from his job. All they had to do was get there, but they didn't have the money and they didn't have the gas. So he offered to sell Dad his tools. And Dad really didn't need them or want them. And he knew that the guy would need his tools on his new job, so instead he just gave them some money and went about his business. He dealt with it by saying, oh yeah, it was probably a scam, that was probably a con artist, I probably threw the money away. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, that's not the case. Dad was part of an integral plan that night. God used Dad to help carry out a plan for this young couple and their daughter. Now, we have no way of ever knowing what happened to them or their little girl. But, you know, I am a big believer in what the Bible says, that you reap what you sow. Every world religion has that concept. In Buddhism, it's called karma. A lot of people just say, what goes around comes around. But I think that's true. And knowing that Dad had done something incredible, I thought, wow, I wonder what will come back to Dad for that. Not that he would want anything. He wouldn't. But I couldn't help but think about it. That's the writer in me. And I was trying to figure out what would be very special to Dad. I ended up instead looking into my own heart. You see, at the time, I had an incredible fear of death. I couldn't discuss it. I couldn't contemplate it at all. I couldn't even let that enter the equation of my life. I knew it was out there, but it terrified me. And I thought, what a wonderful gift it would be if I could talk to somebody who had been there. Someone who had gone through the process. Someone who had seen heaven and the other side. If I could just ask a few questions. Well, that, along with the good deed that my father did that day, along with this Italian girl named Lucia, became the nucleus for this story called The Midnight Saint. I started working on it, and I worked on it for years, over 2 decades. I would take it out at night and work on a chapter here or there, you know, remove something that didn't quite sound right, add something else in its place. It never did seem to come together. It always seemed to have gaps. It always seemed to be lacking in something. but something about it was special, so I kept working on it. A huge catalyst for the book came just a few years ago when I had one of the most the most horrible experience of my life so far. I lost both of my parents in a 6-month time period. Both were very ill. Both had their bodies ravaged by disease and the horrible treatment, trying to treat the disease. They were in terrible shape. And Dad, he was bedridden, confused, a far cry from the proud man that raised me. Dad always had a fear of dying in pain. He told me that several times, and I don't know where it came from. From other things he said, I almost assumed that he watched one of his parents die that way. That was before my time. I didn't know them. But that's what I think happened. And so this was his fear, that he was going to die in pain. But I have to tell you, Dad was given an incredible gift. He died in his sleep. And the passing was so easy and so gentle, we didn't even know when it happened. I was visiting them, and my mother and I were sitting not 6 feet away from the bed, talking. And at one point, I saw that it was getting late, so I kissed her goodbye. And I didn't want to wake Dad. I went by, and his feet were out from under the cover. I guess he had gotten hot laying there, and so I just took his big toe and gently wiggled it and said, "Good night, Dad. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow." I went home, and not 30 minutes later, I got the call that a nurse had come in to wake him to eat dinner, and he was gone. We don't know if he died while Mother and I were sitting there, or in the process of me leaving, or in the time after I did. But the important thing is, we don't know. It was that easy for my father. He just slipped away and went to the next world. And what a gift. Mother was quite different. Mother died with family around her. And she would have wanted it like that. To her, her family was her life, and her life was her family. So, on the day that she died, I was there right by her side. My wife was with me. Mother's sister, my aunt, was there. And the three of us were surrounding Mother when she took her last breath and closed her eyes for the last time. Those two events weighed heavily on me. They're still tough to talk about, and it's been 3 years. They say time heals, but not this. But during that time, I started getting out the manuscript for The Midnight Saint and working on it. This time, it was different. I was adding my own personal feelings into it, my own experiences, my own questions, my own doubts, my own beliefs. Everything about me went into this book, and it became an incredibly personal book. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to paint a bad picture of The Midnight Saint. It's not a bad book. Death plays a part in the book. The book is about life and the joy of living, and that just happens to be the backdrop under which this is played out. But I continued to work on it like that. And more time went by, a couple of years. And it was taking shape, and it was getting larger, and it was coming together. But for some reason, I picked it up in the spring of 2014. And things changed again. This time, I was driven to write the book. And not just that, but it was flowing. Chapters I wrestled with that I couldn't figure out how to write were coming onto the screen. Characters showed up that I had no idea where they came from. I never planned them. I never imagined them. Yeah, I'd be sitting there writing, and when I would finish, I'd written a new character that came in to do something. It was amazing. It was a gift from God. As a Christian, I know that everything I am, everything I have, everything that I will ever be comes from God. And that was this book. I think this book is a gift for me. But it obviously wasn't a gift I was supposed to take and keep to myself. This is a book that I was supposed to share. And I sat down and read it when it was finished, and it scared me. It was a book that was better than I'm capable of writing. It's a book, even though I wrote the words, that brought tears to my eyes. It made me laugh. It made me feel warm inside. I didn't know how I had put together a book like this. And obviously I don't believe I did it alone. But it was a terrible feeling to start letting people read the manuscript, because I felt like it was too personal. It was too much of me. You know, I saw an actress speak one time, and she talked about her stage acting and how she would put herself into a role so much that she described her acting as sitting in a room filled with people and standing up naked and turning around very slowly. And that's how this book feels. I feel like I'm doing just that. People can see every little imperfection. They can see into my very soul. They can see the most intimate things about me. And that frightened me. But I knew the book had to go out. So it went through the publication process. It landed with a distributor, and it started getting out among the people, and I started hearing back. Now, I've been a writer for how many years? Most of my life. I've written some 20-odd books, mostly about nonfiction, history, or about the supernatural. And this is, in many ways, a complete departure for me. But yet, I get fan mail about my other books, and it always makes me feel good to hear somebody say that they liked a book that I wrote. The emails and things I've been getting back on this book are amazing. People are sharing their emotions and their feelings. They're telling me how much the book healed the loss of a loved one, or helped them deal with a situation that they were facing. They're very, very personal notes. And I thought, what an amazing gift that I have been given. The ability to touch someone with this book, The Midnight Saint. So, I don't know where it will go. I don't know what's going to happen to it. I look forward to opening my email every day and hearing from people who have read it. If you read the book, like I said, it's not a book about death. Even though death is the backdrop, don't get me wrong, it's there. It is about life and the joy of life and gifts that God gives. I was eating out the other day with my wife and my aunt, and I ran across a local minister that I know. And he said, oh, I want to read your new book. Now, is this about history or the supernatural? And I said, neither. And I stopped and I thought about it for a minute, and I said, no, that's not correct. It's actually about the ultimate supernatural. This is a book about God and man and the relationship between the two. I hope that you enjoy The Midnight Saint, and I hope it takes you on a journey like I've been on with it. Thank you so much. Enjoy The Midnight Saint.